they truly have a genetic disposition to being obese. It's genetically programmed in their bodies to be overweight. And regardless of what they do, it's an uphill battle all the time to fight the obesity, to fight being skinny or thin. And that's the truth. People think it's bullshit, but it's not. It is the truth. And if you look at obese people, you'll often see that there's a preponderance of obesity within a family, whether it's a direct line or whether it's cousins or whatever. And so that's because they have similar genetic makeup. And so it is absolutely true. And so regardless of, but the thing is, should you treat someone badly because would you go down the street and tell every smoker, you're a fucking idiot, you're disgusting, and I won't hire you because you're a smoker? Or because you look a certain way or whatever, or the same thing you would tell a fat person. So I think it's unfair. Anyway, let's see here. One more thing about the obesity thing. People don't realize this, but the one reason that people are obese is because when I was talking about genetics is because your ancestors, for example. If you look at, for example, African Americans versus Caribbean Americans, okay? If you look at African Americans versus Caribbean Americans. Now, when I say this, what I mean is if you look at two sets of people who are both considered quote-unquote black in this country, but their ancestors come from different places. The African ancestors come from West Africa, because they came here, became slaves or whatever. The Caribbean ancestors came here. They were already in the Caribbean or whatever, and they came here later on a lot of the time or whatever. They intermixed or whatever. And so the people who came over on the boats from Africa, they traveled on that ship for months, right, at a time, and they went through a huge starvation. They didn't feed them much at all, if anything, I think. And the ones who made it, barely made it here when they were brought over on slave ships here. Now, I'm getting to a point here about obesity. So a lot of times you'll see obesity run in African Americans' families because and the reason for this is because if they have slave ancestors, when your body goes through starvation for such a long period of time, like 3 months or 2 months or however long it took to get over here, it's such a huge amount of starvation, your body thinks you're starving because you are. And so it remembers, your body has cellular memory. Your body remembers that starvation period and it remembers what you went through. And so it says, okay, so your body says, your cells say, okay, there's famine around. So every time we have food, what we're going to do is we're going to suck all that fat up and we're going to store it. We're not going to use it up unless we just get so much of it we can use it. And so the more you eat, the more fat is stored in your body because your body is telling you to store fat. And so that's why a lot of African Americans have obesity in their families, as opposed, not all of them are like that, obviously. It depends on where they came from in Africa, but mostly Western Africans. And then that's why you look at Caribbean, people from Jamaica or whatever often are skinnier or thinner because they didn't have to experience that type of starvation because they didn't come over on this huge boat at the time or whatever. I mean, they did at one point, but the journey was made a different way, but I won't go into all that. Anyway, so the point is that when they came to America, they didn't have that in their genetics. The same goes for Irish people. A lot of Irish people are overweight. And the reason is because they had the potato famine in Ireland. During that period, there was a ton of starvation, a ton of it. And so everybody was starving to death. Everybody was unable to eat. And because they couldn't eat potatoes. Potatoes was a staple of their diet. And so there's very little around. So they went through the same thing. Their bodies went through the same thing, telling their bodies, oh my God, there's starvation around. There's famine around. We need to store everything. And so those cellular memories, that cellular programming gets passed on generation to generation to generation. And it's unfortunate, but it is true. That is why. And if you look at certain cultures that have never had starvation because they've always had an abundance of food or whatever around them, they haven't been migrated to different places or whatever, they don't have obesity in a genetic way. So this is the reason there is obesity, and people don't realize it's not the only reason, but it's one of the main reasons. And so people who are genetically predispositioned to obesity have a reason to be that way. So leave them the fuck alone because that's who they are, and that's who they are. All right, so now let me read the chat real quick because I talked a lot. Let's see what was said while I was speaking here. Hold on, let me go back. Says, fuck, I can't roll up. I hate this chat room. It won't let me scroll up. Okay, it says, David says, I am PHAT, pretty hot and thick. That's right. 2 snaps in a Z formation. Okay. And then Ken Boggle says, yes, Amistad. Yes, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that's something people don't realize. Now, David had brought up a controversial topic or question and said, he asked in the chat room, do I think people with HIV or AIDS should get disability checks? Absolutely, they should get disability checks. They have a disability. It's no different than having someone who's on diabetes who is disabled as a result of their disease. Now, I don't know how that works. I don't know if they get it just because they have HIV or AIDS. If they just get it because they have HIV, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, unless it's affecting them to the point where they can't work or, can't have a career or something. That's one thing. But most of the time, people with HIV typically function fine on the drugs that they have these days. Whereas people who have AIDS, which means your T cell count is under 200, that makes a lot more sense, because that makes sense that they would be disabled, technically disabled, unable to work because of dizziness or nausea or weakness or fatigue and all those other things, or diarrhea or whatever the case is. So I think it depends on the reason the person is getting, public assistance. If they're getting it because for a legitimate reason, of course, I think that they should be entitled to it. Yeah, absolutely. I believe in that. I'm a liberal, remember? All right. So that's enough of the healthcare and medical category. Let me see here. Oh, by the way, I'm doing a show. I'm trying to do another show where I don't talk at all. I play no music at all except for my opening thing here. So I'm trying to find something to play in the interim between each segment. So let's see what we're going to play between each segment here. Let's see. What can we do? Let's do this between each segment. Let's drag this over here. All right. And then, okay, the next segment is going to be all about, should we talk about sex and gender next? Let's talk about religion. Let's talk about religion next, okay? This is the next one we have coming up here. Did that work? Let me see if it even worked. I didn't have my headset on. Okay, so, wait. Religion. Okay, it's the next one. So the next topic is religion. Oh, wait, let me see. There's more comments in the chat. Ken Boggle says, if cancer patients receive government benefits, AIDS patients should receive benefits as well. Yes, I agree with you. I have two friends that are relatively healthy and HIV positive and brag about having disability check and will not work. I am saying HIV positive. Okay, well, anyway, yeah, I agree. I agree with that, David. I agree with that. Okay, so religion is next. So religion is a very controversial topic, obviously. And let me preface everything I'm going to say. We're going to talk about churches and taxes, and we're going to talk about the Pledge of Allegiance. And we're not going to debate religion as to whether it's real or not necessarily, unless you want to get into that, people. But I want to say, first of all, that I feel that everybody is entitled to their religion. I think religion is a right. I think you have a right to have your religion. I think you have a right to believe in what you want to believe. I think that's one of the great things about America. And the reason that it was founded, or the reason that we have America, was because it was founded because of people who were being religiously persecuted, the Pilgrims and people like that, initially. So they were running away from religious persecution. So I believe in the freedom of religion, but I also believe in the freedom from religion. So if you have freedom of religion, that means you obviously also have the reverse, which is the freedom to have no religion. And so David says all but Catholicism. Okay, well, I can agree with that. Just kidding. So, I agree with that. And so the thing is, people need to have the right to their religion, and it's perfectly fine. And people are very, 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 what's the word? Devout and very stern and staunch believers in their faiths, whether you're Christian or you're Christian or Jewish or Catholic or Jewish or, Muslim or Buddhist or whatever religion you are, Scientologist, whatever, whatever religion you are, it's great that you feel so strongly about it. However, the problem I have with religion as a whole is when it is pushed onto other people as you must believe this way or you're going to die, or you must believe this way or you're going to hell, or you must believe this way or else, you're not one of us, or whatever the case must be. And that's the only issue I have with religion. I have no issue with religion in and of itself. I was raised in a religious home, not devoutly religious. My grandmother was devoutly religious. My mother was not. And I lived with both of them growing up most of my life. So I was raised around religion, and it was part of our, we would pray around the table before we ate, and, there was Christmas and blah, 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 of course. But I And so I understand what it means to be religious, but I just have an issue when people say, and that the problem is generally with Christians and with the Muslims. Christians and Muslims are the ones that proselytize, the most. It's not generally, you don't usually find Jews going out and saying, be a Jew or not be a Jew. It's what you usually hear them say, whatever. I don't care, just be whatever, whatever you are, generally speaking, not always if they're Orthodox. But and the same with Buddhists and sort of the Eastern religions. I don't really see them preaching or proselytizing and saying you got to believe this way or you're going to hell or whatever. It's usually only the Christians and the Muslims that do that. And so the ones that go around saying, the Bible thumpers saying you have to believe this way or you're going to hell, you're evil, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that you're saying if I don't believe the way you do, that I'm ignorant, stupid, ridiculous, whatever, that I am a moron or that I'm evil. And you're making judgments on me based on your own personal perspective. And that is the problem I have with it, telling me what I should do with my life. Just live your life, be your staunch self, your staunch Buddhist self, as you are, Ken Boggle, or your staunch Christian self, as I think you are, David, or your staunch Muslim self, as the Muslims are, or Jewish self, or whatever you are, be it the best you can be. But don't go around telling people to believe in something you believe just because you believe in it. Okay, so in terms of religion, there's two questions I wanted to talk about. Churches and taxes and the Pledge of Allegiance. First of all, quickly, we'll talk about the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance has been around for, a long time. It was written in a contest or something in the early 1900s. It hasn't been around longer than that. And it said, at that time, until 1957, it said, I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. That is how the pledge was originally written. However, in 1957, it was changed. It was changed to include under God, and to include that in the actual speech. And it unfortunately bastardized it for me, because it bastardized it for this reason. We have freedom of religion and from religion in this country. It's in our Constitution. So to have that freedom means that the children in classrooms, or whomever is saying this, should not have to pledge any kind of, or affirmation or affirm any kind of God or any kind of religious belief at all within their government, their patriotic speech. It has nothing to do with your patriotism, whether you believe in God or not. So I find it to be wrong that it is included in this Pledge of Allegiance. I think that it should be removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. And people have fought that for many, many years, and it's probably never going to happen, of course. And of course, people who are saying it don't have to say it. They don't have to say under God at all. You can just skip that part if you want to. So I find that to be acceptable as well. But to be in the official, Pledge of Allegiance, I think is wrong, and I think is unfair and biased. And so, do you think that it should be in the Pledge of Allegiance, or do you think it should be removed from the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you think that it should be part of our patriotic flag speech thing, or what? Ken Boggle says separation of church and state. That answers the question. No deity should be mentioned in your Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. That's what I say too. I completely agree with you. What do you think, David? You may disagree. You probably do. Anyway, let me know what you think. Okay, and the other issue of religion I wanted to discuss was churches and taxes. I have a huge issue with this, an enormous issue with this, and I have for a very long time, since I was young and realized this is the case. The case is that churches, being nonprofit religious organizations, do not have to pay taxes. They're exempt from paying taxes. Okay, they're a nonprofit exemption they have or whatever. And so, as a result of this, the United States loses over $100 billion in tax revenue a year. Billion. That's a lot of fucking money. $100 billion in tax revenue a year. So that is enough money to either fix all of our roads in a year, all of our roads, okay, fix all the crumbling infrastructure, the fucking bridges that are falling, whatever, or to fix the the education system, and to pay teachers, or the right kind of salary, to get enough teachers for every student, to have a level education system in this country. And so I find that to be really ridiculous. And the only reason